You might recall back in July, I'm sure you do, that President Trump said he'd meet any time with the Iranian leadership. And now we're at a situation where he said, well, it was just too soon yesterday. Back in July, it was Iran that was saying, no, we're not ready to meet unless sanctions are lifted first. And now Iran's tone sounds a lot more positive. What's happened? There seems to be a lot of change in positions here.
This is very important, Sami, and the way you phrased your question sets the record straight. Because for the last 24 hours, we've been hearing people make it sound as if the Americans are making the concession on resuming or in having some sort of a dialogue between Washington and Tehran. While just as you stated now, it's important to note that it was Washington that was willing to have dialogue with Tehran after it imposed its secondary sanctions on the Islamic Republic. And it was the Iranian president and notably the Iranian spiritual leader Ayatollah Khamenei, who said we will not have dialogue until the sanctions are lifted. So for now, for the President Trump to say, well, it's too soon, my guess is he doesn't want to meet with a foreign minister. My guess is that the land or the road is being paved as we speak, and that eventually in September on American soil, maybe then the American president will meet his counterpart, the Iranian President Rouhani.
So, I mean, all right, looking at this from what's happened in the last couple of days of G7, has Macron, are the Europeans somewhat getting successful at bringing the Americans round to their thinking?
Well, look, I am very skeptical of what we've heard in the press conference, what we've seen in terms of the backslapping and the hugging and the cheek kissing and so on and so forth. I'm very, very skeptical. I think behind the scenes and from the very fundamental positions of each and every one of those economic power, there are major differences that have not been resolved. I think the questions of Russia, the question of trade and war with China, the question of Brexit, and the question of Iran, there are no agreements. But yes, certainly the French president have called his counterparts in Tehran and said probably something like, why don't you make a statement that I'm ready to meet with anyone if that will serve Iranian national security, and I will talk to President Trump and maybe we can work something out. Certainly there is an Iranian effort in that direction. But, Sami, and this is important, I think what the Americans are asking of the Iranians, not only just in terms of the long-term commitment, but in terms of the missile program and in terms of their regional policies, I haven't seen any signal from Tehran that they are willing to compromise on these issues. So while we might see a meeting which will allow the Europeans then to trade with Iran without the United States, we're not necessarily seeing the end of the tunnel in terms of the showdown over the nuclear deal.
All right, Marwan Bishara there, our senior political analyst.